Hey, folks. Happy Donald Trump is Guilty Day. Today's episode is brought to you by my favorite sponsor, sunsetlakesabadeh.com. Use the code LEFTISBEST for 20% off. What kind of things can you get 20% off on? Well, all of Sunset Lake Sabadeh's great products, including one of these, the Focus Gummies. Has CBD and lion's mane and cordyceps. I popped a couple of those before the show. And at night, sometimes I use the sleep gummies with CBD, CBN, and some melatonin. But really, my go-to is the tinctures, frankly. The good night oil has become a staple. It is so incredibly effective for me anyways. Has CBD, CBN, and I don't think there's any melatonin in it. But they also have tinctures with just CBD. They have multiple flavors of those tinctures. They have multiple dosages. They have smokables, keef, pre-rolls, flowers. They have CBD fudge and CBD coffee. They have salves, which is really important to me because it's, yes, eczema season. Now the salve is actually for your muscles. It has, what is it? Arania? What? And CBD in it. Araca. The point is it's great. All of their products are third-party tested. They use great farming practices, integrated pest management. They also do not use pesticides. They use regenerative farming practices, so they take care of the soil. They have great business practices, $20 minimum wage, mostly employee-owned, and they are movement partners. Longtime fans of the show, that's where Left is Best gets you 20% off. But also, they have donated thousands upon thousands of dollars. It has to be well over $50,000 that I'm aware of on things like strike relief funds, food pantries, refugee resettlement, Planned Parenthood, carceral reform, the mutual aid in the wake of the floods up in Vermont. They're situated outside of Burlington. Just an all-around great company, great farming practices, great product. Like I say, third-party tested, so you know exactly what's in there. sunsetlakesabadeh.com, 20% off with the coupon code LEFTISBEST. And now, time for the show.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder, where every day's Casual Friday. That means Monday is Casual Monday, Tuesday, Casual Tuesday, Wednesday, Casual Hump Day, Thursday, Casual Thurs, that's what we call it, and Friday, Casual Shabbat. The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
It is Friday, May 31st, 2024. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA, just a mile or two away from the New York City court, which yesterday found the former president of the United States guilty on 34 charges.
Ooh-wee.
Or I should say 34 counts of fraud. For the first time in the history of the country, a former president found criminally guilty of a felony. LOL. Also on the program today, we'll be talking to Guy Lawson later about his new book, and I imagine about some of this as well. Sentencing in the former president's criminal case will happen July 11th, 4 days before the Republican National Convention, which will nominate him as their nominee. First time a convicted felon will be the nominee of a national party.
A trendsetter.
Meanwhile, in Ukraine, as Kharkiv hit again, U.S. changes policy on U.S. weapons being used to strike inside Russia. And as Israeli ground troops enter Rafah against the wishes of supposedly the United States and certainly the rest of the world, the Israeli Prime Minister's office tells families Israel will not end the war in exchange for the return of hostages, something that we have known for quite some time, but now it's explicit.
Almost like it was never about the hostages.
Texas Supreme Court rejects challenge to Texas abortion law brought by dozens of women denied medically necessary abortions. 2 more State Department officials quit over U.S.-Israel policy, and one in particular to the State Department lying to Congress as to whether Israel is allowing humanitarian aid to reach Palestinians. Joe Manchin leaves the Democratic Party, largely irrelevant for everyone except for in West Virginia, who may see him run for governor as an independent. And Vermont becomes the first state to force oil companies to pay for damage from climate change. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. It is
Casual Friday.
Casual Friday.
And a fun Friday.
And a fun Friday. A little bit, we're a little bit hyped up, as you know. Let's just start with the former president of the United States.
The former commander-in-chief.
The former commander-in-chief.
Oh, yes. Who placed his hand on a Bible and swore an oath to the Constitution.
Swore an oath to the Constitution, and given it all for America. Putting it all on the line.
And it's an honor to do it.
And sacrificing and being the one guy to be convicted on 34 counts for all of our sins. Here he is speaking outside the courtroom yesterday after the jury of 12 Americans, not including the 6 alternate.
Couldn't find peers, though.
One of whom, just a reminder, gets all of their news from Truth Social, according to them.
But they were all liberals.
Yes, of course. And here he is speaking after seethingly, apparently, hearing the jury say guilty 34 times in a row. Here he is.
Are you worried about going to jail?
Perp whack.
This was a disgrace. This was a rigged trial by a conflicted judge who was corrupt. It's a rigged trial, a disgrace. They wouldn't give us a venue change. We were at 5% or 6% in this district, in this area. This was a rigged, disgraceful trial. But the real verdict is going to be November 5th by the people. And they know what happened here, and everybody knows what happened here. You have a Soros-backed DA, and the whole thing. We didn't do a thing wrong. I'm a very innocent man, and it's okay. I'm fighting for our country. I'm fighting for our Constitution. Our whole country is being rigged right now. This was done by the Biden administration in order to wound or hurt an opponent, a political opponent. And I think it's just a disgrace. And we'll keep fighting. We'll fight till the end and we'll win, because our country's gone to hell. We don't have the same country anymore. We have a divided mess. We're a nation in decline, serious decline. Millions and millions of people pouring into our country right now from prisons and from mental institutions, terrorists, and they're taking over our country. We have a country that's in big trouble. But this was a rigged decision right from day one with a conflicted judge who should have never been allowed to try this case, never. And we will fight for our Constitution. This is long from over. Thank you very much.
I really wish we could see every convicted felon walk out of the court and just immediately launch into a diatribe about
I had a 5% approval rating in this district.
Right.
nobody likes people who assault other people, and that's why I could not get a fair trial.
I'm carjacking for your sins.
I wouldn't have to carjack if there weren't so many mental institutions from other countries unloading their people into this
I didn't do a thing wrong.
nothing.
Convicted felon Donald Trump. Is that how we're going to be referring to him going forward?
It would only be fair.
Right. It's appropriate.
Let me just say I'm a very, very innocent man. So innocent.
I mean, when you have to say it, it really is like it doesn't really, I think, make it seem like you are very innocent when you have to repeat it over and
When you
over
doth
again.
protest too much?
A little bit.
We're obviously going to talk more about this. I will just say one of the things I heard on the AP this morning is I listened to, the AP in the mornings to get a sense of how news is being reported to other people. It was a Southern gentleman, and it went something like this. I would never vote for an indicted, for a candidate that was criminally convicted. I would never do that. However, I do not believe this was a real conviction, and he was not. It was a rigged trial and conviction, and so I will be voting for Donald Trump.
So yeah, I'm gonna throw that out. I think I heard that morning too, this morning too, because you've turned me on to the AP breaking news kind of podcast version. But I don't know. I've been seeing the most brain dead takes that this is in some way going to help Donald Trump. It is absolutely not going to help Donald Trump.
We will talk more about all of those questions.
Yeah.
He did raise, I don't know, $39 million, which it's a lot of money. But I don't know if that's going to help him or not. We'll see. We'll talk more about that in a moment. Want to play a clip? Our intention today, before Donald Trump so rudely yesterday interrupted our day, and we'll talk a little more about that later. But our intention today was to play an interview that I recorded this morning, actually, with Meron Rapoport. He is the editor of a local call and a writer at 972 magazine. He and also reporters from The Guardian, they both had different parts of this story, that the former head of Mossad, while he was working for the Mossad, was directed at Benjamin Netanyahu's direction, as well as other Israeli intelligence agencies, to surveil the ICC chief prosecutor. The Guardian has a piece that says that this guy, the former head of Mossad, literally threatened personally the former ICC chief prosecutor and was attempting to blackmail that person. Meron's reporting has to do with their surveillance, who the surveillance was perpetrated by, for what purposes, in attempting to stave off what ultimately became essentially an application for arrest warrants for top Israeli leaders, in addition to some Hamas leaders. But this morning there was a story in Haaretz written by a Haaretz reporter, Gur Megiddo, who says that he was on to a similar story about 2 years ago, and he was called in to Israeli security and basically threatened, if you write this story, you will be on the inside of one of our interrogation units and maybe you will have other issues as well. So he was threatened by a senior security official. You know, they have their government is pretty censorious, and
they run it like they're a mob organization.
well,
essentially.
this story outlines it. In fact, the former head of Mossad said that's what this sounds like. This sounds like the Cosa Nostra. I asked Meron this morning if he felt any danger in reporting this story, particularly in light of what came out with Haaretz, and if he was aware that Haaretz had been pursuing this, because it never came out. What do you make? Were you aware that the Haaretz writer had gone through this process?
No, we didn't. We didn't know that. We knew that Gur Megiddo did publish a report about Yossi Cohen, the former head of the Mossad. He was head of the Mossad at that time. That he had strange visits in Congo, in the Democratic Republic of Congo, and something had to do with the former president of Congo, Joseph Kabila, and that he was later deported almost from Congo. We knew that, and we had a hint that it was related to the prosecutor issue, but we didn't know more than that. We certainly didn't know that he was threatened in this way by the Israeli authorities.
Have you received, prior to publishing this or in the course of the reporting, have you received threats from the Israeli authorities? Because I have to say, like, and we'll talk about this in a moment, the nature of the threats to the ICC prosecutor, the former ICC chief prosecutor, these were not sort of official threats, as it were. These were threats of like blackmail and extortion, and sort of outside the law, essentially. I don't know how else to articulate that.
Yes, that's the way it seems. I have to make it clear. We did an investigation for several months together. I'm talking local call 972 with the Guardian, a shared joint investigation with the Guardian regarding what we call the almost 10 years war, secret war of Israel against the ICC, against the International Criminal Court in The Hague. Surveillance by the Israeli army and other intelligence agencies. While we were investigating this, the Guardian has come out with this own report about the whole Yossi Cohen's affair, and really this incredible story about how he threatened personally, and what seems, according to this report, as a director trying to blackmail Bensouda, the former prosecutor in The Hague, Fatou Bensouda. Yes, but so in this, I don't know much more than was written by the report in The Guardian. Of course, I know the reporter. I personally, I trust him totally. He's super reliable, but I don't know too much. But yes, what is described there, I think it is hard to describe it else otherwise than blackmail and threatening.
Okay, so let's step back. All right, we are going to play the rest of that interview with Meron Rapoport next week. Like I said, there is some major news that broke yesterday.
Yes.
That people are probably aware of, and we're going to be talking about that today. But we will play the rest of that interview next week with Meron Rapoport. We will put links to 972 reporting in today's podcast description, as well as the piece in Haaretz and The Guardian outlining all of this, and we will do that again when we play the full interview. Later in this program, we're going to talk to Guy Lawson, not only about a little bit about the news that broke over the past couple of days, but more so about his book on this incredible scandal with college sports, and particularly in light of the fact that there was just some type of settlement.
Massive settlement. Yeah.
Billions of dollars. But we'll talk about that in a bit. First, a word from our sponsor today. It is Prolon. A lot of people I'm sure you've been reading about the benefits of fasting. One of them weight loss, but things like mental and physical performance, gut health, and longevity. But one of the things that inhibits people from doing that is the worry about what happens when you don't eat. Like, it's hard to do. Well, that's exactly why Prolon was created. Prolon is a revolutionary plant-based nutrition program that nourishes the body while making cells believe they're fasting. It was researched and developed for decades at the University of Southern California Longevity Institute, backed by leading U.S. medical centers. Prolon helps promote healthy blood sugar, support cardiovascular health, and reduce abdominal fat. But Prolon isn't a diet. It is science. Science based on Nobel Prize-winning discoveries in medicine. And this all starts with Prolon's 5-day program. They have snacks, they have soups, they have beverages, all designed to keep your body in a fasting state. It is unlike anything else you've ever experienced. I did this now, what, it was like 2 or 3 months ago.
Yeah, you were saying it was great.
I thought I was going to be a wreck.
Right.
I had the kids that week. I'm like, this is a mistake. I shouldn't do this. But I found that I had a tremendous amount of energy over the course of those 5 days. And B, I never, I've read other people sometimes they have a headache. I didn't have a headache. I mean, it wasn't the easiest thing I've ever done, but it certainly by far was much easier than I thought. The hardest time was when I lost one of my little chocolate crisp snacks.
Right.
And that almost threw me into a tizzy. I'm
But
like,
you were pretty normal. I mean, I wouldn't have been able to tell. And,
Nope. And the thing is that my understanding is that if you do it like 2 or 3 times a year, and I may do it again, what happens is by the time you get in like day 4 and 5, your body has gone into a different sort of like system, and you start getting rid of dead cells. I don't know, folks can read about this because it's all highly documented. But it's fasting, but with food. It's no wonder why thousands of doctors now recommend Prolon to support healthy blood sugar and cardiovascular health. Right now, Prolon's offering the Majority Report with Sam Seder listeners 15% off their 5-day nutrition program. Go to prolonlife.com/majority. That's PROLON life.com/majority for this special offer. All right, we're just going to take just a quick 10-second, 15-second break, and then we'll come back. We're going to talk more about the fact that we boast in this country now a convicted felon, former president. We'll be right back. We are back. Sam Seder, Emma Vigeland, Majority Report. Yesterday was a big deal. The news broke. I was actually in a parent-teacher type conference.
Right.
And everybody on the phone or the Zoom was kind enough to realize, like, oh, okay, well, because everybody was interested, everybody was getting texts, but they also said, like, Sam, we understand if you need to step away for 5 minutes. And so I did, and I did a YouTube video just announcing the verdict.
Reaction.
And then spent about 15 minutes trying to figure out how to turn off the live video.
I'll teach you that one of these days.
Well, the thing is, I used to know, and then I forgot, and they changed the app. Anyways, so Donald Trump convicted on 34 counts. We're going to go through everything that you're going to be hearing. A lot of people debunked the sort of lies that the right wing and the defense attorneys were saying that the judge had screwed up on the instructions to
the jury.
the
We
jury.
actually opened it with that yesterday because it was just so ridiculous. They were saying that unilaterally the judge had told the jury in the instructions that they did not need to be unanimous when they came back with a verdict. But that's not what the judge said. The instructions basically said that you don't need to agree on all of the methods that on what the primary method essentially was to bring it up to the election interference charge. You don't have to be unanimous on that point, but you do have to be unanimous in rendering a verdict on the counts. So like it would be a pretty big deal if the judge all of a sudden said, yeah, we're throwing out the concept of unanimous jury convictions in their instructions to the jury. It might raise some legal issues. If
It
that
would
were
have
the
raised
case.
some legal issues because that's not the way it works in criminal cases. But what's interesting is you're going to hear all of this. There's going to be so many different excuses for this. I mean, they're going to bring this stuff up on appeal. People I have spoken to say they don't think the appeals are going to work. Now, I will say right up front too, I don't think Donald Trump is going to go to jail for this. If you look into cases like this, and we're going to talk about how many cases are brought up like this, just in New York City, the punishments range from community service, pay a fine, to going to jail, depending on how how these people are situated, how many criminal convictions they've had in the past, et cetera, et cetera. Is there a history of this? I don't expect Donald Trump to go to jail, but he is a convicted felon, and unless it's overturned, he's going to remain a convicted felon. And
Can't vote for himself.
And he cannot vote for himself in Florida.
Oh my God!
Even though he
so
shouldn't.
funny.
He's had his vote taken away.
Because of Ron DeSantis overturning that.
Ron,
How dare you,
you
Ron?
never get it right. But here is Donald Trump's attorney. Now, here's the thing. This is an interesting exchange here because for two reasons. One, you're an attorney. There has been a lot of criticism. In fact, we had a guest on Wednesday, a professor of white collar crime, who was like, if I was the defense attorney, I would not have argued this case in the way they did.
Going after Michael Cohen's credibility, as opposed to just basically saying this is a stretch for you to bring it up to a federal or a felony charge because of its, it
wasn't just about Michael Cohen's credibility. It was that they were skeptical as to whether, when Donald Trump said these are legal services, whether Donald Trump would actually know, would have examined that so specifically. And then the second part being that, like, well, I mean, maybe he, just didn't have the intent to clear this up. He just, hired his attorney, and the attorney went ahead and did it. But nevertheless, there's criticism of the attorneys. And so if you're an attorney who's just lost, one of the things you want to do is go out there and make sure that, like, this doesn't ruin my career, because I don't want to be considered a bad attorney. So maybe I won't take full responsibility for everything that was argued. But also, remember that you've argued that Donald Trump was not the type of guy who's going to look into specifics.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't have micromanaged any of this. So it leaves you as an attorney in sort of a dilemma. But here is how it falls apart for Donald Trump's attorney, Todd Blanche, who was on with Jesse Waters. Now, remember, this is a friendly territory.
To help him.
How involved was Donald Trump in his own defense?
I mean, what do you think? I mean, very involved, and he's a smart guy. He knows what he's doing. He jokingly said to us a lot. Sometimes he wanted to be the litigator. You know, he wanted to be the one that was actually arguing because he's a smart guy and he knows what he's doing. We made every decision together. We did, and there were things that he was frustrated with. You know, the judge several months ago, there was we wanted to be able to argue reliance of counsel, that to some extent President Trump was relying on his lawyer, and the judge didn't allow us to do that, and things like that, where he would really push us and say, well, why can't we do this? Why can't we do that? It was an honor for me to spend the last 6 weeks with him, defending him. It didn't work out. I mean, we got a bad result today. It's not over.
All right, stop. Okay, so I just want
It's not over.
just parse out what the guy just said.
Yeah.
He said Donald Trump was walking us through why we should argue that he was just relying on counsel. In other words, that like I was doing my lawyer told me, while this guy is explaining that Donald Trump was literally telling us what to do.
Yeah.
As his counsel.
Right.
So like we're to believe that when it came to paying off a woman who he wanted to be silent from an affair that he had had 10 years earlier, in that he didn't instruct his lawyer at that time to do all this stuff in certain ways so that it could be obscured, but also to believe simultaneously in the exact same sentence that we got that idea from Donald Trump telling us what to do.
Oh, right. He's all across this. You can't make that case. Maybe that's why they didn't attempt it, right? Maybe that was a little bit why. Randall Eliason, when he came on, the professor was saying that the defense felt very Trumpy. Like maybe they did have to appeal to their client by calling everybody a liar and this and that. Maybe they were hamstrung by his own ego and the fact that this trial is not just a trial, it's an extension of his presidential campaign.
I've known people who've known like Donald Trump's bankruptcy attorneys, and they're like, it's impossible to deal with him as a client because he just does what he wants to do and he won't listen to us, and he goes in and he blows the case every time. Now, with that said, I think that there was a lot of surprise by people that there was unanimity on all 34 on the the entire accounts. A lot of people thought there would be at least one juror who might hold out and there would be a hung jury. I mean, that was sort of like what I think everybody anticipated.
Ted Cruz was begging for it on TV.
Yes.
I mean,
yesterday.
regardless of the fact that you had one juror, again, who got all his news from Truth Social, and like the speed in which this verdict came back. I mean, we thought this was going to take a week or two.
Yeah.
And so we were completely not anticipating this.
Yeah, I mean, I've been on a jury. I don't remember if we ever had a case that had 34 charges to get through, but that would be like, I'll be like, oh, we're going to be here for a couple days at least.
Right. It was 10 hours total of deliberation when you took into account the day
Doesn't
before?
sound like they had a lot to deliberate. Like 20 minutes. What does that average down to? Like 10 hours. Yeah, I don't know how to do the math, but they moved through them.
Yeah.
So that was Todd Blanche on with Jesse Waters. And here is that same attorney, Todd Blanche, on CNN. And one of the things, the question is, Donald Trump had said before the trial, I can't wait to testify. Mm-hmm. And
debate them.
And show them who's who and show my credibility. And this is impressive. And I think I don't know if Blanche brings it up here. Well, here is
a little
Caitlin
less friendly
Collins.
territory here and similar conversation.
Right, doing that. And that's where I think we have disagreements. We think there are a lot that we're not.
Why did Donald Trump not ultimately take the stand here?
Well, that's a very personal question to him and to me, honestly. And it's a very
offended.
difficult question. Of course, he wanted to testify. And I don't say that because that's what he has said. He wanted to get his story out. I think the judge had made some decisions before the trial or the day of the trial started about what would be allowed to be asked of him by the prosecutors if he took the stand. And some of those questions were really complicated to answer because there's still appeals going on. And so there's a lot of decision points that go into whether somebody testifies. Ultimately, it's his decision, and he listened to us, and he relied on our counsel, and he reached a decision that he thought was right, which I very much agreed with.
So that means your counsel was for him to not take the stand.
I'm not going to tell you what my counsel was.
But you said he relied on counsel and he went with that decision and he didn't take the stand.
But ultimately, it was his decision, and I never say, and I think colleagues and folks that you have on here hopefully agree with me. I never say to somebody, "Don't take the stand." Right? That's their decision, and that's a decision that they have to make. But I want them to have They want them to know what will happen on the good and the bad if they do take the stand.
So no regrets on him not taking the stand?
Look, the verdict came down a couple hours ago. I don't know if I have any regrets about anything yet. I'm still thinking things through, and I think so is he, and so are everybody else around him. But at this point, I don't think that there was a conviction because he did not take the stand.
When he was leaving, one thing he brought up were the witnesses who were not called. And he was saying that there could have been witnesses that would have helped make the case. We never saw Keith Schiller, Alan Weisselberg, some key figures here who got brought up a lot. Why didn't the defense call any of these witnesses?
Well, because we happen to live in America and we don't have the burden of proof. And so that's not the point. That's a question that is a loaded question that should not be asked of a defense attorney or a defendant. The question that we ask.
Well, there's a lot of questions. Okay. And he's right. The defense does not have the burden of proof here.
Right.
But defense does does call witnesses in a lot of criminal trials.
If they think it's going to help their case.
And I suspect that, the prosecutors felt like we've established this entire thing. And we've made our case, and we feel pretty comfortable with our case. Donald Trump did not want to testify because I'd have to supposedly tell things that I don't want to tell.
It's complicated. I wish it wasn't.
And then why didn't you bring in the other people that could have exonerated you? Well, we don't. Why? Of course not, because it's America. And here's Donald Trump basically complaining about what was his decisions.
The judge allowed them to go into everything that I was ever involved in, not this case, everything that I was ever involved in, which is a first. In other words, you could go into every single thing that I ever did. Was he a bad boy here? Was he a bad boy there? And my lawyer said, what do you need to go through? And all you wanted to do is testify simply on this case. Because I would have loved to have testified. To this day, I would have liked to have testified. But you would have been, you would have said something out of whack, like it was a beautiful sunny day and it was actually raining out. And I very much appreciate the big crowd of people outside. That's incredible what's happening.
Oh, pause it. I appreciate the juxtaposition between him saying, you say it's a very sunny day and it's raining out. You get caught on that. Incidentally, let me tell another lie. There's a lot of people out there in support of me.
Right.
Just incidentally.
Right. It would be, well, I guess he's saying he would have been tripped up there. But I wonder what those internal conversations were like about him testifying. I don't think he would have wanted to either. And I also think it was probably that guy's counsel. But they can't say that publicly. He gets tripped up by Caitlin Collins because, again, this is not a normal defendant. This is not a normal situation. Trump has to also manage the perception, like, very intensely afterwards, and he needs his lawyer to be an extension of that because they're going to try and appeal.
It's so offensive,
right,
to ask that question of me, because I want to make sure that you don't in any way pursue that line of questioning.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to be saying, like, let's face it, he did a lot of things that were criminal, and I don't want him having to lie about it on the stand.
So nuanced, all these conversations. We just don't have time for it.
We don't. Yeah, I have no idea.
I mean, like, let's just sit with this for a second. We are in a two-party system, and the presumptive nominee for one of those two major parties is a convicted felon who also has been impeached twice, found liable for sexual abuse, also found liable for defamation in that case, and has been found in a civil case to have committed fraud, where there's hundreds of millions of dollars that he has to pay to the state of New York. And then there's also 3 other trials that he's in the midst of right now.
Not to mention, in the 90s, he used undocumented Polish labor and got them sick with asbestos. So.
Well, as long as you don't ask me about the consent decree, when I wouldn't let black people rent into my apartments.
Was I a bad boy?
Was I a bad boy here? I'm sorry, it was raining out. That's why I needed a consent decree.
And maybe he was a little bit of a bad boy when he was taking out a full-page ad in the New York Times to get the Central Park 5 locked up by the very justice system that he's now saying is so unfair to him.
Well, to be fair to me, that's how I got the contract to do the Central Park skating rink. So, here is Jeanine Pirro.
Oh my God, she has got to be heartbroken.
Former prosecutor herself, who's just appalled. This is, and let me say this, and I may repeat myself on this. A lot of people are saying, like, this is a sad day for America, where the president is former president's convicted felon, where the presumptive and will be a Republican nominee is a convicted felon. No, actually, it's a happy day for America, regardless of what your political persuasion is, because it means that even if you are a fake billionaire or 100 millionaire or whatever it is, and a former president, you can still be tried by a jury of your, the closest that can be to your peers, I guess, by average Americans, and found guilty. Like our system works, and look, there's no one who thinks that this was no one who's not motivated, who thinks that these charges were in any way, forgive the pun, trumped up. It's only lunatics like Jeanine Pirro believes.
Free now to call President Trump a convicted felon. I got to say, though, over a year ago when President Trump was asked, will you drop out of this race if convicted or not convicted, if indicted, he said, no, because I actually think it will help me in my poll numbers. They've done well in fundraising. He's done well in polling. Does this help or hurt now in the public opinion, where he's got to get independent voters, where he's got to get people who are not necessarily part of his base, now that he's got this conviction, which may or may not one day be overturned?
You know, Shannon, I don't have the answer to that question. I want to believe that Americans believe in justice. And I think that in their gut, they realize that there is something that is very wrong here. We have gone over a cliff in America. This verdict is a verdict of someone who was forced to fight a 1,000-pound gorilla with both hands tied behind his back. This was a defendant for whom crimes were created, against whom a judge was picked that out of the ordinary, not from the drum, but a judge who was handpicked for this defendant, who denied him the ability to fight the way he needed to fight, who brought in crimes that we've never heard of in New York before, where they had dead misdemeanors that they resurrected into felonies based upon non-unanimous verdicts of crimes that are federal, over which no state court or no state judge or prosecutor has jurisdiction. And in the end, with all the smoke and mirrors and 34 counts and a hooker and a guy, according to a federal judge, is a serial perjurer. We have convicted a former president of the United States of America. We've gone over a clip. The question as to whether or not America will react to this, whether his numbers will go up or down, I don't know.
Okay,
But
all
I
right,
do
yeah,
know
we
what-
don't know her. I wanted her to talk about how these were fictional crimes, that crimes that no one else would face. She, to be fair, was a Westchester prosecutor, so she may not be aware of what happens in New York City. I mean, she's talking from New York City.
Mm-hmm.
She used to be a prosecutor. Maybe she wasn't back in 2015, so maybe she's unaware of this. But this is from law.com. New York State has issued nearly 9,800 felony charges. Pop this up there. 9,800 felony charges of falsifying business records since 2015. Data shows 9,794 cases involving state penal law 175.10 or falsifying business records in the first degree have been arraigned in both local and superior New York State courts since 2015. Scroll up here. Trump, former President Donald Trump, and this was written in back in April, so before anybody knew that whether he'd be convicted, is far from the first person to face felony charges of falsifying business records. Almost 10,000 people since 2015 have been charged with this in New York State. If you go to pop this up from
NBC New York.
NBC New York back in April 7th. I-Team, falsification of business records, rarely the top charges on New York indictments. In other words, they often are secondary charges to an underlying crime that existed, that the falsifying of the business records is to cover up another crime. That's very much often when those charges get promulgated. I mean, it's like, I don't know, in some states, like you don't get charged for not wearing your seatbelt, except for as an add-on to other charges. In this instance, the NBC New York had done a story on this when the charges were announced, because this is the way that it happens for a lot of people. And the idea that we don't see this with, let's say, Democrats or whatnot, pop up this story from Fox about a former Maryland Attorney General, I think she was, ex-Baltimore prosecutor, and she was the former top prosecutor in Baltimore. Her name's Marilyn Mosby, and people are seeking a pardon for her because she was convicted in February of one count of mortgage fraud. Do you have it? You want me to send it to you?
I got it.
One count of mortgage fraud that she testified she unintentionally made false statements on a loan application to buy Florida vacations homes. She was convicted on 2 counts of perjury because she claimed financial hardship during COVID-19 pandemic so she could withdraw money from the city's retirement fund, ostensibly to maybe buy these apartments. And just writing something on the mortgage application that was considered to be inaccurate, which she said she thought was, not a lie. And she's going to jail for this. Now, Donald Trump's not going to end up going to jail, I don't think. But like all of this is completely within the realm of like what we normally expect. Completely.
If they can do it to Marilyn Mosby, they can do it to you.
And then I guess there's the accusation that this never would have happened if Trump were not the president and were not in like the public eye in the same way. But that's kind of the case for every politician. Everybody who seeks power, who seeks to be a representative of the American public in this representative democracy, this republic, right? They are going to get increased scrutiny because of the nature of public servitude. So it's not, yes, would this have happened? And again, the charges were about interfering in the 2016 election too. So it's hard to say that this would have happened if he had not run for president. No, it wouldn't have happened. But does that mean that the underlying charges are false? Absolutely not.
Yeah, there's a long history of rich people in this country thinking they may want to run for office and then deciding better of it because it might bring out some things they don't want to be scrutinized.
Exactly.
I mean, but it never, ever happens that a Democrat is overly scrutinized or is charged with anything because they're the president or related to a president, except for on Monday, Hunter Biden's
trial starts for felony gun
starts.
charges. Yeah.
So except for in that one tiny incident. And this is the amazing thing about Joe Biden.
Yeah.
What he's doing. He can orchestrate this thing in New York. And then he can either, a lot of people think like, oh, well, it's proof that he's not able to orchestrate these things if he can't get his son from not going on trial for felony gun charges. But that's just what he wants you to think.
Exactly.
This is not just the deep state. It's the deep state.
They do a very good job, honestly.
Sacrificing his son.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to be talking to Guy Lawson. He is longtime friend of the show and a journalist, writer, author of multiple best-selling books. Has, I think tomorrow, Hot Dog Money, Inside the Biggest Scandal in the History of College Sports comes out. Nobody that I personally know knows about corruption and how the corrupt people's minds work better than Guy Lawson. We'll be right back with him.
Without?
Oh, that's great. We are back. Sam Seder, Emma Vigland on the Majority Report. It is a real pleasure and a very much an overdue one to welcome back Guy Lawson to the program. He is the author of, 6 books now? How many,
well,
6 of them
depends
are...
how you count them. Depends how you count them.
Well, I mean, count them any way you want. I mean, I
got a new book. That's what I got.
Well, there's Octopus, which is one of my favorite books. And
My favorite, actually. That's my favorite.
It's a great book about sort of like a what would you call it? A
A
guy
con
who
man getting conned.
exactly. The Dudes and the Arms, which ultimately was made into the movie War Dogs.
Oh yeah.
The first one
The
about
Brotherhoods,
the Brotherhoods about police and mafia.
which it may be coming back as a movie. That's something that's really happening like right now. I just read the script this week. There's a new script, and it's actually, well, you don't congratulate till the check clears, but
all right. Well, then I'll hold off on
Knock
that.
on wood.
The script actually made me laugh. So, it's kind of got that Goodfellas vibe to it. So that's kind of
Oh,
cool.
good. And your latest hot dog money inside the biggest scandal in the history of college sports already has been. It's not even released until tomorrow, and it's already been the movie rights have already been bought. But all right, before we get into that for one moment, okay, because we've had conversations about Donald Trump over the years,
We sure have.
both on and off air. What is your sense? I don't know if you heard about this, but he was found guilty of 34 charges yesterday.
Say it ain't so, Joe.
What's your sense? And I should say you're a Canadian. I mean, you've been in this country for a long time, but you still have a little bit of that sort of like perspective of being outside of this country in some way, and I think that gives you a good view of things. What is your view of what's going on here?
Well, I guess I have like a couple, maybe three things to say. One of which is that I used to be a lawyer, and criminal law was my particular area of interest, and it's where I really got my best grades and things. And what Trump's got now is he's basically putting the legal system on trial. He's trying to, it's nullification of the rule of law. It's not even of the jury anymore. It's just the whole idea that there's law and that juries can reach verdicts that they are valid. I'm reading SPQR, which is Mary Beard's book on the history of Rome. And I'm right at the moment, like maybe ironically or not, at the 1st century BCE, before Common Era. And there is this rise of authoritarianism going on in the Roman Empire at this time. And I think that people might perceive it as like it all happened on one, Julius Caesar did it all, but it was not like that. It was spasmodic. It came in intervals. It came in really unpredictable ways, but at the same time, in hindsight, very predictably. And, to me, it seems like this country, there's like a sense of entropy in this country, like just this lack of willingness to a very large, significant number of people just kind of crave strongmen and crave solutions to their problems, their complicated problems, crime, immigration, the rise of feminism, diversity, inclusion, and equity. These things are, they're complicated things to achieve. And it seems like one side of the argument says, well, I don't give a crap anymore. And the other side is kind of doesn't have anything much to say in reply. I mean, look, I became a citizen after they murdered Jamal Khashoggi, because in my business, like, that's a relevant thing to think about. If you just have a green card, that's not going to cut it in this country, which was what Khashoggi had. So I became a citizen in 2021. It'll be my first ever presidential vote. I'm not conflicted about how I'm going to vote the first time around. But having said that, do I wish, my college sophomore rising third-year student twins were more enthusiastic about their choice of Joe Biden? Yeah, man. Do I wish there was someone younger and more vigorous? Yes, I do. But, so I think the thing that's happening with Trump is not that Trump is such an original. It's that he's tapping into some deeper well that is very distressing. And the joke about history is it doesn't repeat, but it rhymes, right? And I'm not saying this is the Roman Empire, but turning into the Roman democracy, turning the Roman Empire. But there is something like really amiss about this society when you have people who are negating the rule of law. And it's sort of like January 6th. You wonder what's on the other side of this. So in my career, as you introduced me and then said I'm Canadian, it's almost like that Canadianness along with my Australian years and it's like my outsiderdom has given me a kind of unique perspective. Like, I'll give you an example, War Dogs, right? Like that book, people say, where do you find your stories? I found that story on the front page of the New York Times. The New York Times had a story about 2 kids who'd ripped off the Pentagon and fooled the whole world, and the Justice Department was going to bring them to justice. It was all absolute BS. It was exactly the other way around. The authorities didn't know how to get a whole ton of weaponry into Afghanistan and Iraq without dealing with gun runners. So they got these kids to go be their gun runners. So I think that having an outside perspective, as I like to think I have, has been very like defining for my career. So if you look at it, I wrote a book about corruption in the New York City Police Department. I wrote a book about corruption on Wall Street. I wrote a book about corruption in the Pentagon. And now I've got a book about corruption in sports. Like, what's the thing in common, right? It's corruption and America.
Right.
Like, there's something like in the 21st century that is off. And I do think that the mainstream media is a significant piece of it. And that's why I admire so much what you've achieved with the Majority Report, which is you kind of got to go off the grid. I mean, I'd like to think in the thoughtful way that you do it, as opposed to like the lunatic right conspiracy theory people. But at the same time, it's like Donald Trump he's not norm busting. The norms are busting themselves, in my view.
I mean, it's interesting because as you say that, like I think about Sam Israel in The Octopus, and the reason why he got so easily conned into believing that there was, I mean, folks have to read this story. It's just, it's insane. But he ended up believing essentially there was like an international Fed that was giving out money to rich people because he had experienced so much of the corruption on Wall Street that he just assumed applied this to everything else in the world. And on some level, like there is a quality of the phenomena of Donald Trump. And, even in your latest book, there's also this sort of same thing where, when your lead character actually sort of like goes to the NCAA and,
says this is what's going on.
Yeah. And they're all like, oh, okay. And like, there's no, like people like, this is the way we operate.
If you envelop yourself with lies, right? It's a strange kind of phenomena, a psychological phenomena, which I think Sam Israel perfectly personifies. And the NCAA, you just start to believe that everyone's lying and everything's a lie. And therefore you just become territorial. You just want to get over that day. And that's Trump is like that, right? Trump's just trying to get through each day. And if everyone's lying, everyone's a piece of crap, everything's meaningless. If the world is just like this con game, then why not con? I mean, it's funny because Sam's out of prison now and we've been in touch. And he said to me the other week, he said, I have to read Octopus just to remember what the hell I did. So it's it's like you kind of, if you look at Trump in a way, it's pathetic, right? Like he's living inside this scrim of delusion. It's a form of, in my view, a mental kind of, that this is why he accused, I mean, apart from his projection, I mean, people are starting to cotton onto that. The idea that he accuses everyone of doing exactly what he's doing himself. But it's imagine living inside that world where everything revolves around you, where all things are about you're the victim. And like being a parent and a husband and
he's not. I mean, he's barely those things. He's those things.
I know. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, or
the things that we like. Yeah, the things that we consider, like I consider my reality, right? Like,
right.
I said to my daughter this morning, you should make your bed and clean up your room. And I didn't say it to be mean. I said it because it's like a good sign of like developing mature skills, like just interacting on that simple level. Like, does Donald Trump say to, Don Jr., you really shouldn't cheat on your wife or, lie on in the media? Like, where's the moral guidance? Where's the kind of sense of beginning, middle, and end? I know. So
don't you think your sister's hot?
Yeah.
Looks good on TV. But
there's 70 million people who go with that, right? 70, 80 million people who go with that.
You're absolutely right. And, when you said this thing about this like concept where everybody the characters in the context of your books, and also, in America where everybody sort of feels like everything's a lie, and there's a certain nihilism. We had an interview that I think was now 6 years ago with a woman, Emily Ogden, who wrote a book about mesmerism and credulity.
Yeah, I remember the book.
And the dynamic there with Joseph Mesmer at the time, and that's where the idea of mesmerism came, was that he's up there saying, like, everybody's lying, but you and I are lying. You know that, like, I'm lying in service of you. That, like, you're in on it with me. And so therefore it's like, in a world where everybody's lying, you got to pick your champion, and I'm your champion.
It's like the Doobie Brothers, what a fool believes he sees.
And this is, I think, like the dynamic that Donald Trump is drawing on.
But there's a thing within that, right? There's a thing within that. So Mesmer, you have to sort of see it from the people listening to Mesmer or listening to these conspiracy theories. It's like it appeals to something within them, right? Like there's a need within that, an emptiness. So in this case, in Trump's case, I think it's largely race. It's largely age, economic dislocation, and grievance, just grievance against the world. And so there's that. Con men don't con people in the raw. They con people because they're appealing to something. So Sam Israel, for example, you're talking about octopus. Why did he manage to raise $450 million with a complete fantasy, right? There's a bunch of different reasons, many of which Sam understood, some of which he didn't, but at least one of them, the biggest one, is that he was offering them something they wanted. They wanted 18% return. They wanted a really big return on their money without having to think about it. And a lot of that was other hedge funds that were called funds of funds. So people were managing money just to give it to another person to manage and then taking a cut. That was most of where his money came from. And Sam knew those people knew. They kind of knew they were being lied to. Like, that's the thing within the thing, right? Like, you kind of know it's a lie. And that bred in Sam a certain amount of contempt for those people. So it's like that gaslighting. There's a woman I was going to write about. I didn't write about her, but you probably might remember her. It's like, I think they did a Netflix series about her, like the bad vegan woman. Do you remember that? Did you come across that? She had a restaurant in Manhattan called Pure, and she was like an attractive food impresario. Anyway, her boyfriend, partner, gaslit her into thinking that he could let her dog live forever. And so she stole millions of dollars from her restaurant and blah, 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 and winds up on Netflix. But the point about it is that there was some neediness in her, like some element of desire. And that's what Trump is tapping into. That's what, it's the same thing as Trump Steaks and Trump University. Like, they're obviously just stupid concepts, but people want to live in that world. They'd rather have that than their reality.
Well, that series you're talking about, that was called The Bad Vegan, right, on Netflix.
Yeah.
I watched that too. It was interesting because I thought it was one of those
Yeah,
cults.
I know her.
Oh, you do? Okay. Well,
Yeah.
then, I mean, that's a fascinating story. I thought it was one of those cult documentaries when I started it. And then in the end, it kind of is, even if it's a cult of one, the guy that she's duped by. And that's part of what this is too, right? It's emptiness filled by a cult-like mentality, where if we're in post-truth America or nothing matters, and there's this nihilism that's crept in. I think a lot of it's late-stage capitalism too, right? Just people feeling so alienated. Then basically, the simpler answer is to join this cult. And MAGA is a cult in that way, or Trump's followers are. Similar
it solves
thinking.
things, right?
Yeah.
It's like, I don't have to worry about things. I've got this one thing that I can believe in, and that simplifies and sharpens my reality, and it makes everyone else a jerk.
Yep.
And it's not for nothing that one of the biggest components of that appeal is to own the libs, is to inflict emotional distress on others, which is a form of sadism, right? It's like I take pleasure in your misery. Like, that's a big part of the appeal. How this plays, how does a Philadelphia suburban mom vote for Donald Trump? Like, how does, the Arizona, the Maricopa County, soccer mom tell herself that this is a good idea for her kids, that things are going to get better for her kids if they just have 4 more years of absolute chaos? And because, at the very least now, what's clear is that he's been convicted, he'll appeal and all that. But at the very least, if he's elected president, there will be the specter of imprisonment looming over him, or, reoffending and breaking parole. I mean, he'll be on parole, for God's sakes, or probation, whatever the term is.
Oh my
It's like, you got to go check in with my PO,
Oh my God. All right. Well, let's talk more.
It's been a while, hasn't it, Sam? It's been a while.
It has.
It's been
I just one more thing. Like I heard, as you're saying that about, it providing something they can believe in where they don't. There is a certain fundamentalism that allows them. Like I heard a guy interviewed by the AP. The AP this morning, like, is saying, I would never vote for a convicted felon for president. Except, but I don't believe this is a real conviction, and I don't believe that he's. I'm going to vote for Donald Trump. Like that's the just sort of like I've already. I may have to do a little bit of work, tiny bit of work into working around these first order principles. But the first order principle is I'm voting for Donald Trump. He's my guy.
So
and then everything else follows.
That just reminds me of like Sam Israel. So he was this trader, and he pretended to be this like technical trader. So he had all these walls of computer screens and all these different graphs going up and down. It looked like what they would call now algorithms. And it was horse crap, right? It was just absolute made up stuff. And listen to Sam. He'd have these investors come in and putting 50, 100 million bucks into his fund. He thought that they knew it was bull crap. Like, I don't know where you are on swear words on this podcast. I don't want to get you into the potty mouth category, but he knew that they knew. But what were they getting from him? They were getting 18%. It was made up, but it was 18% a year. The exact same number, by the way, that Bernie Madoff was doing across town. So there's some like set of underlying logic to this. So what's that guy getting? He's getting he doesn't have to think. He's getting that he can be racist and anti-woke and all the things. He can be like a jerk to his wife, or, honk his horn at an African-American person, and just, he doesn't have to think about his bigotry and his entitlement and his privilege. There's no challenge to it, right? He's the victim.
Yep. All right. Well, let's talk about your latest. The book follows a guy who was basically in sports management, I guess, right? And
you call it management, yeah.
Well,
thievery.
Yes, and it has particular relevance because just like I guess it was a week ago. The NCAA paid off like some big
$2.7 billion
in lawsuit, or is it?
It was like a collection of basically lawsuits. So it was a class action judgment, and it was. Go ahead.
Yeah. No. I just literally the second before I dialed in here, I was putting the finishing read on an op-ed I have for Rolling Stone coming out tomorrow about this very thing.
Well, tell us like your thoughts, I guess, because I've been speaking about how, the NCAA not paying their athletes who provide billions and billions of dollars, or millions of dollars at least, for their universities, particularly if they're playing in like a Power 5 conference for football or basketball. Not getting compensated is essentially criminal. This now provides basically a framework. It doesn't mandate that they should be compensated, and they need a union, I think, to push that along, but a framework for eventually getting them out of this extremely corrupt system.
It's in the op-ed for Rolling Stone, I say it's like someone's been stealing from you for a century, and then they come to you and say, you know what, I'm going to continue stealing, but from now on I'm going to give you 20% back. I'm only going to steal 80% of this dollar from you. It's just obscene and absurd. And it's not a settlement, by the way. It's a proposed settlement. and it won't fly. And it won't fly for a variety of reasons. One, you can't wish away 100 years. You can't just settle away 100 years of physical predation, and physical. The idea is that the NCAA, ask yourself this fundamental question. What's the purpose of the NCAA, right? Is it for colleges? Is it there to represent colleges? Or is it there to represent sneaker companies, TV networks? Or maybe, is it there for the kids? Is it maybe the athletes that they should be taken care of? There's no regulation of this settlement. They're just basically throwing a number into the air and saying, you figure it out, colleges and Power 5 divisions and conferences and things. It's basically what the NCAA is saying their role in society is they're the mafia of sports. They're going to whack the country into territories and they're going to take a cut. That's what it is. They provide no regulation, no protection for the students. So this NIL thing I write about in this op-ed, that's name, image, likeness. So the kids, this is all in response to first, the book that I wrote, Hot Dog Money, is about a scandal that broke in 2018 where 100% of the coaches approached by my guy Marty Blazer and the FBI with bribery money to steer their star players like Zion Williamson to a corrupt and obviously mob-adjacent financial advisory company. 100% of the coaches at leading schools like Louisville, USC, Arizona, LSU, on and on, 100% of the coaches took the bribe money. Not 80% or 90%. Not one coach said, hey, man, I'm in this 5-star suite in Vegas with this shady guy who's handing me 50 grand in cash. What am I doing here? And I'm trafficking my kid into a mob-related financial advisory relationship, and they're 17 or 18 years old. Like, is this wrong? Like, let me think about this. You know, it's unbelievable. So the NCAA, in response to that scandal, and then there's a judgment in the.
Let's go back for a second so that we give people just sort of like, so how Marty Blazer is sort of the, I guess, the protagonist, and we should say he just passed away.
He did.
And
unbelievable.
At age 53 of a heart attack. But
he's a
how did you
Pittsburgh
find this guy?
He found me, actually. And that happens from time to time. People in prison write to me and people in legal jeopardy. And rarely does it work out because you need to have a lot of different elements to really carry a story. And one of which is some version of a desire to be self-aware. So Marty reached out to me and was trying to like interest me in his story. And honestly, the things that he was sending me, they just didn't make sense. Like, he definitely had like an OCD kind of lack of organization to his thoughts, which is not uncommon for people who do stupid stuff. That they lack that minute by minute awareness. So anyway, over time, I came to sort of see the merit in Marty's story, and I really like implored him to just do it step by step, and he would begin to understand his story in a different way, and that worked out. But Marty basically was a super ambitious financial advisor to NFL players in Pittsburgh. Guy in the suburbs of Pittsburgh. He's got like half a dozen, then a dozen players in different teams around the league. And he loves it. He's like a jock kind of a guy. And, you know, he's setting them up at strip clubs. He's getting them free watches. He's private flights to parties and all kinds of sort of 5-star sports celebrity life with rappers around and pop music stars and things. And but at the same time, he's like this suburban dad with a kid who plays soccer at the junior high. And he just basically, as he says in the book, he said, I had the worst possible personality for that world because he's just wants to exaggerate, thinks he's smarter than he is. He's greedy. He wants to get over. He thinks everyone else is stupid. And so he basically decides these athletes want to invest in cool businesses, right? They want to invest in bars and things like that, where they can bring their friends and impress them. And he thinks, what's a better business than the movie business? Let me just say to your listeners out there, your viewers, if anyone asks you to go into the movie business, that's not a good idea. That's really not going to work out great for you. So he invests in this movie called Mafia, of all things, like Wheels Within Wheels, and it stars Ving Rhames, and it's the worst. I mean, it's literally the worst movie ever made. It's literally unwatchable. I defy anyone to watch it for 3 minutes without just like throwing the remote at the TV. But he makes this movie and a couple other projects, and he loses $2 million in 3 months. And so now he'd asked his athletes if they wanted to invest, and they said, no, thanks, no. Even they could see it was a stupid idea. So he just stole the money. So now he's stolen $2 million. The feds are closing in. He's screwed. He knows he's going to go to prison. So he comes up with the idea, he and his advisors, I'll go in and confess before I get indicted, like literally a minute before he's indicted. He goes into the Southern District of New York, Manhattan, and says, I did it. You got me. And then they start this thing. It's called Queen for a Day, which is you can confess your crimes for that day. And in theory, they won't use it against you, but of course they will. So he starts telling his story. And along the way, this prosecutor, who's now the United States Attorney for the Southern District, a guy named Damian Williams, a very brilliant guy, says to Marty, says, well, how do you get your clients? How do you sign these kids out of college? And Marty says, I bribe them. I give them money. I give the family money. I give the girlfriends money. It's why everyone's doing it. Sneaker companies, agents, everybody's paying these kids. There's no such thing as amateurism. It's just absolute farce. And they say, really? Like, you got to sort of transport yourself back in time before this case happened and think, well, doesn't the NCAA regulate that? Isn't that like against the rules? So Marty says, the government basically says, we'll put a wire on, you go show it to us. So for 3 years, he goes out with a wire on, offering bribes to everybody in college sports. And this is where I get back to the 100% of coaches and sneaker executives and families and athletic directors, 100% just take the money because, of course, everything's on, is to hark back to our earlier conversation, is a lie. Everyone's cheating, so why not cheat? And that becomes the basis of a case that becomes the book Hot Dog Money, which I think is like a really interesting perspective on what Emma was calling like late capitalism, or pre-lapsarian, post-lapsarian America. But it also involves corruption in the FBI, and the FBI starts misappropriating money, and then incompetence in the Southern District and the prosecutor. It's like one of those things that I don't know. It's kind of like my speciality, right? Lawsonolini, or whatever you call it. Like it's like everybody's kind of a mess when you really look at them closely in these kinds of environments.
And we should say hot dog money is what they would call basically just walking around money, right? Where you pay the kids.
It's the first time he offers a bribe, the kid says to him, it's a running back to the University of Pittsburgh, say, hey Marty, hey Blaze, got any hot dog money? And Marty didn't need to be told twice what that meant. He knew exactly what it was. He reached into his pocket, pulled out like $500, palmed it to the kid, and he was in. That became his client. His first.
Yeah, that's the NCAA, right? I mean, how many handshakes happen where they just have a handful of cash in it? I mean, Odell Beckham Jr. got in trouble because he went to LSU when they won the national championship and was handing out money to the kids, and then the kids get in trouble. Reggie Bush took a car after he won the Heisman to give for his mom, and he got his Heisman taken away. Like the whole system is corrupt, but they pin it on the kids because they want like a little something for their labor.
One of the things I mentioned in the Rolling Stone op-ed, and it's a significant piece of the book, is like the legal fiction that the government came up with to prosecute and get convictions in 10 of these coaches' cases. And it could have been 10,000 coaches. There was like no end to how many people they could have incriminated with this thing. Was that the victims were the colleges, because the kids were the bribes were denying the colleges the honest services of these kids who were supposed to be amateurs. It's just like it's Alice in Wonderland. A word means what it means because I say what it means. It's Humpty Dumpty. It's absolutely absurd. The real victims in this case were the kids. The kids were being trafficked by their coaches, by their parents, by sneaker companies. They were being conspired into abusive possibly criminal relationships, and they're 18 years old, 19 years old. To me, what's the purpose of the NCAA? I asked this a while ago. The essence of it is, if it isn't to protect the kids, then just get rid of it. It has no purpose. It's just a mechanism to split up money amongst white upper middle class people. That's all it is. It
You
has
may get
no
your
purpose.
wish.
So
You may get your wish.
I think I will.
I think it's on its way out. We're looking towards like that Power 5 Super League. I think that's how it's going to end up being. And then can you explain a little bit how the NCAA gets out of paying athletes? Because like the NFL and the NBA and other leagues, they have antitrust exemptions, right? Which allows the different businesses to operate and collude, essentially. Say 32 NFL teams, they have an antitrust exemption by the federal government, but then that requires a union. That means that there has to be a union for players.
Yeah.
That's part of how the NCAA can rip off these kids, because they pretend it's a student-athlete experience as opposed to them actually selling their labor. Then they would need an antitrust exemption. Then they would need to have a union for these kids.
The essence, so I explained how hot dog money, the case that I wrote about, was one of the elements of this desperation of the NCAA coming up with name, image, likeness, and now this proposed settlement. If you read Justice Brett Kavanaugh, his judgment in the case Alston, and I'm no fan of Kavanaugh, don't get me wrong, but if you read that judgment, that antitrust exemption is gone. It is just, the NCAA knows that's coming. The antitrust exemption will be gone the next time a case gets to the Supreme Court, probably unanimously, and they're trying to sort of reverse engineer their way out of it to create some plausible narrative for the Supreme Court to say, well, okay, you're doing this and doing that, and maybe we should let this persist for another. They're like junkies, right? They're just trying to get another fix, another fix, another fix. And it's over. The game's over. It's just a matter of when the whistle blows. So to me, the idea that the NCAA is going to survive is ludicrous. What we should be thinking about what comes next. And in the Rolling Stone op-ed, I write that for me, one of the first things that should be done is that every student athlete, now with NIL, it could be, doesn't have to be a Power 5 kid. It can be it can be like a volleyball player or a gymnast that some regional school can make money out of name, image, and likeness. There should be a compulsory first semester course at every college in financial literacy. Every kid should be taught how and why there are so many ripoffs, so many schemes. An example, in Hot Dog Money, there's a chapter titled "How to Make $1 million off one kid," and it describes in really revealing and I think uniquely revealing detail, like how buying a car for an athlete, how the financial advisor will profit themselves out of that, how getting a free watch is never a free watch, how all these things that seem to be one thing are actually something else, because these grown-up financial advisors and agents and sneaker companies, they're in the business for decades. They understand exactly where all the nickels and dimes are hiding. These kids don't have a clue. So at the very least, some significant piece of that TV money should be about educating these kids about their own finances and how contractual relationships, like another example, these booster clubs, right? So you're in Alabama and there's a bunch of car dealers and insurance guys that want to put together money to get a quarterback from a high school in upstate New York or wherever, some kid that's really got Alabama level talent. Well, does that kid and his parents actually understand what they're getting into with that booster club when they sign that contract? When they, take that money that can be pulled back at any time or it's got all kinds of strings to it that they don't understand? I mean, one of the sad elements to this is that it's so deeply cynical, college sports, that everyone thinks they kind of understand it, right? Like the parents think, I know how to get over. That's part of the story in Hot Dog Money is these parents think that they're going to fool the colleges or the agents or the sneaker company. They're not. They're not. What they're going to do, and it's shown over and over again in Hot Dog Money, is they're going to ruin their kid's life because they're going to get caught and the kid will be punished. And everyone will be shocked, morally shocked that the kid got the car like Randy Moss. When the real problem is they didn't take it the smart way or they didn't understand the implications of it. So I don't know. I mean, what I think, I'm not like a career sports writer. I don't spend my time hanging out with and understanding the ins and outs of, rising stars in sports. I'm more like a crime and corruption guy. But it sure seems like people should be thinking about what comes next, like now. And it sure as hell is not this 20% of future revenues horse crap that the NCAA's come up with. I mean, it's a measure of their desperation, right? Like nobody, quote unquote, gives away, settles for $2.8 billion unless they know there's something really, really
right. If
wrong.
there's billions more that they're going to be making,
Yes.
and that's just part of the,
That's an
the cost
opening
of
offer.
doing the business. Yeah.
It's also heavily racialized. I just want to add as well. And a lot of these schools are Southern. They're relics of extremely racist institutions, to put it mildly, and still racist themselves. And it's a lot of white guys and young black players. Yeah.
Marty, and I argued about that a lot. Marty, and maybe it's a measure of how you can collaborate with all kinds of people. I think Marty and I had very, very different politics and very different views of things like race and history. And so the book, it addresses that issue, but Marty really felt it wasn't race related. But I agree with you, Emma. I think that there is an enormous amount of race underlying this. I mean, the best analogy I've heard for the NCAA is it's sharecropping, that you only have one place you can sell your crops to, and you only have one place you can conduct business, and that's the sharecropper's store. And you're basically in perpetuity, like limited. And that's what monopolistic power looks like. You dominate these people's lives. And so for my money, it's not for nothing that like some giant percentage of basketball prospects and then players are African-American. It's not always true, but it's true enough to make you have to think about it in a really elemental way. So, yeah, it's in that sense, it's extremely American, right? Like, what's more American than the sort of the 3/5 of a vote? The beginning of the Constitution starts with this lie that slaves count for 3/5 of a human being, so Southern states can have the majority in the Electoral College. It's a big problem in this country. And I say that as somebody who didn't grow up here, but sort of, as you were saying, Sam, I'm Canadian, so I have like ironic closeness. Like I get it. I understand this country, but I'm also not quite of it.
The book is Hot Dog Money: Inside the Biggest Scandal in the History of College Sports, available starting tomorrow.
You can get it now, pre-order.
Man. Folks, go pre-order this book. By all means, we'll put a link to it at majority.fm and in the podcast and YouTube description. Go pre-order this book. Really great, uniquely American tale in many respects.
Thanks,
Guy,
Thanks,
always a pleasure.
Great to talk
We
to
got to
you.
do this again soon.
Yeah, man. Nice to meet you, Emma. Thanks, Dan.
Nice to meet you too.
All right. All
Cheers,
right,
guys.
folks. We're going to take a quick break, head into the fun half, and we will continue to have more fun over, the complete right-wing freakout that is taking place because Donald Trump is a convicted felon.
Tim Pool's not taking it well.
Tim Pool not taking it well. We'll be back for the fun half in a moment. But just a reminder, it's your support that makes this show possible. If you listen to the show, I don't know, twice a week, once a week, 3 times, 5 times a week, or watch the show any amount of those times, support us if you can. Your support, again, helps the show survive and thrive. You can become a sustaining member of this show at jointhemajorityreport.com. Also, don't forget justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, hot chocolate, and you can get the Majority Report blend and 10% off with the coupon code MAJORITY. So check that out, justcoffee.coop. And also don't, the other thing, I'm going on a cruise. Like a seafaring cruise. I only bring it up because I know how crestfallen Em is, but I didn't go on my first cruise until I was 56.
Oh, there's still a lot of time for me.
In fact, that's probably the better time to go. As your sun's setting. That's the.
Is that a
You can
cruise ship
join me
noise?
on the Nation Cruise at nationcruise.com/MR. And there's going to be Jeet here and Ellie Mistel and Katrina vanden Heuvel and a bunch of others. Some great writers, and we have like
Bhaskar?
And Bhaskar Sankara is going to be there, and we're going to be. I'll be interviewing some of these people, and they'll be having conversations and talks, and it's going to be an interesting time. It's either going to be talking about like what can progressives and leftists do to, push the Democratic Party and to support their allies to the extent that there are any who within the Democratic Party, or it's going to be, hey, what's the best way to hide from the authorities that are coming after you for everything you've written or the YouTube show that you have?
Let's just stay at sea. Maybe Sam will be exiled.
Exactly. At that point, as long as we're 7 miles off the coast of the United States, I might be safe. So check it out. nationcruise.com/MR. Emma, ESVN.
We talked about the Eastern and Western Conference Finals on Tuesday, I guess, and we also talked about that settlement, the NCAA settlement that we just talked about with Guy, so you can check that out, and then we'll be back on Monday to give you any updates. Pray for me. Rangers down 3-2 in the series. So.
It's always darkest just before dawn.
Oh, it feels pretty dark right now.
Matt, speaking of darkness, with the Wolves.
Well, we'll get him next year. How about the moon time? On Left Reckoning, we had Chip Gibbons on to talk about the recent movement in the Assange case in the UK, as well as Liza Featherstone talking about AstroTurf being a neoliberal boondoggle. We'll probably be reacting to Trump's legal troubles. Patreon.com/Left Reckoning on Sunday, so check that out, folks.
All right, folks, quick break. We'll be right back with the fun half. 3 months from now, 6 months from now, 9 months from now. And I don't think it's going to be the same as it looks like in 6 months from now. And I don't know if it's necessarily going to be better 6 months from now than it is 3 months from now. But I think around 18 months out, we're going to look back and go like, wow. What? What is that going on? It's nuts. Wait a second. Hold on for a second.
The Majority Report.
Emma, welcome to the program.
Hey.
Matt.
What is up, everyone?
Nomi Key.
You did it. Let's go, Brandon.
Let's go, Brandon.
Bradley, you want to say hello?
Sorry to disappoint everyone. I'm just a random guy.
It's all the boys today.
Fundamentally false.
No, I'm sorry. Women's.
Stop talking for a second and let me finish.
Where is this coming from, dude?
But dude, you want to smoke this 7A?
Yes.
Hi, me? Is this?
Yes.
Is this me?
Is it me?
It is you.
Is this me? Hello, is this me?
I think it is you. Who is you? No sound. Every single freaking day. What's on your mind?
Sports. We can discuss free markets and we can discuss capitalism.
I'm gonna go throw up.
Who libertarians? They're so stupid though. Common sense says, of course.
Gobbledygook.
We fucking nailed him.
So what's 79 plus 21?
Challenge Matt.
I'm positively quivering. I believe 96, I want to say.
857-210-35 501 1/2 3/8
9/11, for instance.
$3,400, $1,900.
654 $3 trillion sold. It's a zero-sum game.
Actually, you're making me think less of it.
But let me say this. Poop.
You can call it satire. Sam goes with satire.
On top of it all,
Yeah.
my favorite part about you is just like every day, all day, like everything you do.
Without a doubt. Hey, buddy, we see you. All right, folks.
It's just the week being weeded out, obviously.
Yeah, sun's out, guns out. I don't know.
But you should know.
People just don't like to entertain ideas anymore.
I have a question. Who cares?
Our chat is enabled, folks.
Love it.
I do love that.
Look, gotta jump. Gotta be quick. I gotta jump.
I'm losing it, bro.
2 o'clock. We're already late, and the guy's being a dick. So screw him. Sent to a gulag?
Outrageous.
Like, what is wrong with you?
Love you. Bye.
Love you. Bye-bye. We are back. Sam Seder, Emma Vigeland, Majority Report, Fun Half, Charlie Jerk on the IM. Hey, MR crew, I'm super excited for the November live show you teased and ready to buy my plane ticket. When can we expect details about the show? Well, I will reveal that it will take place on election night.
Woo!
And so it could be a real shit show.
Totally. Gonna have to pace ourselves.
I still remember watching Michael. He had a live show that he was a part of. I think it was like, I'm not sure what he's doing it for, but
who's this?
Michael was on a live show the night that Bernie, I can't remember which primary night it was. I think it was when everyone turned to Biden or something like that. Anyway, it was over.
It was the bloodbath on Super Tuesday.
Right. Yeah, Super Tuesday. And just being stuck on stage as that's happening.
In 2020, you mean?
In 2020.
Yeah.
But wait, when was Super Tuesday? Just a week before, or no,
COVID.
2 weeks before COVID.
Yep.
Right.
I was there in Burlington, Vermont, where he gave his speech. It was a very sad evening because that was when everybody dropped out, right? Around the same time. Wasn't that the case?
Yeah. Well, I was on live radio with Janine on the night that John Kerry lost. And that was extremely uncomfortable. We were also, we were at a live show. We had in a theater right next door to where Jon Stewart was taping The Daily Show. I remember at that time I was a smoker, and I went outside to have a cigarette, and I think Jon Stewart was standing outside there. I think he may have been a cigarette, and I was wearing my bow tie, which was my sort of way to confuse people with Tucker Carlson.
Yes.
And I knew John a little bit at the time, and he came over and he said, I'm sorry about the bow tie thing. And I said, yeah, don't worry about it. That was fine.
That's funny. Was John Kerry as bad of a candidate as I remember?
The worst thing in my mind off the top of my head that he did, in addition to look, the Democratic Party was everything that you think is frustrating about the Democratic Party now, multiply that times like 5.
Right.
Everything that you find ridiculous about the media now, multiply that times 20. On top of which, all I remember is John Kerry in August windsurfing off the coast of Nantucket. And I was like, dude, I mean, honestly, can't you just say to yourself, I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait until after the election. Like, okay, you need a couple of days for vacation, take it. But when you're running against a guy who's like just catering to corporate and wealthy people interests,
right?
Maybe you shouldn't be out there going like, incidentally, I'm windsurfing off the coast of Nantucket.
Yeah, I mean, all I remember, I was born in '94, so I was 10, right? But
Excuse me?
Yeah, I was 10 years old during that time. I have like old diary entries my mom found of me talking about the election too, saying that had just learned how to curse. I think that it was like Bush was a piece of shit. Vote for Kerry or something. I should find those. But I just remember that he voted for the Iraq War and that his message on that was extremely muddled.
It was very muddled. Well, he was for it before he was against it, that type of thing. The flip-flop was the big...
Oh, God. I remember mowing lawns listening to that sort of talk about he's a flip-flopper and kind of...
Yeah.
I think the media just really sucked at that time.
The media was dismal. I mean, the Swift boat stuff was impressive, and then they just brought it back. It was the same people who did, the Clinton bucks. Bannon just recruited that guy.
Yeah.
Mag Gusson. Hey, Sam, Emma, and team, can I get a shofar for gifting myself an MR membership for my birthday? It would be almost as good as the 34 convictions for my birthday. Left is best. Zero Summer, my 21st birthday was Super Tuesday in 2020. Certainly a fun night to start drinking. Indeed. Colonel Burner. Sam, when are you going on David Cross's podcast? Isn't he right there in New York? Yeah, he is. Actually, he's right here in Brooklyn. I don't know. That's an excellent question. I am convinced that I will not. There's no way I will get on that podcast until like a year after Benjamin goes on. I don't think Benjamin's been on yet. So, Lawful Waffle. What are you talking about, Sam? Are people coming after you? During the, no one's coming after me. Well, look, I'm not going to go too deep into it, but I've been doing this for 20 years. I've had plenty of threats, et cetera, but during the Bush years, it was not, absurd to be aware of the potential for the IRS to be weaponized and regulations, et cetera. Nothing really to report on that of any serious measure. Do I think that Donald Trump watches this show? No, I do not think he does. Do I think that there were alt-right figures during last Trump who would watch the show and were very vindictive about it? Yes, I know that for a fact.
We had a few run-ins with
We had a few run-ins with those people. Were those people who were guests of the White House? Yes, indeedy. Would things be run differently this time around? And those things, not inconceivable. Wait, Benjamin was on Cross's podcast yesterday?
It's messed up.
Like a week ago? I didn't know that.
I just found this diary.
Everybody's saying that. Oh,
about
Jesus.
About John Kerry. Do you want me to read a part of it to you?
Sure.
Okay.
If you really want to.
I don't want to, actually, no.
Benjamin was okay. So I'll be on Cross's podcast in a a
You have your diary digitized?
I took photos of this because it was funny. It's just 11/2/04. Tomorrow we find out our new prez. I'm scared. I hope it's Kerry. I doubt it, though. Bush is such a dolt. Somebody stole our John Kerry sign on our front lawn. So unfair. Ryan Cabrera rocks. He has a new song called True. Never mind. That's
what?
Yeah, I wrote about that. That was my old diary about politics from 2004. So there you go.
Somebody stole your sign.
Yeah.
Whoa,
right.
that's crazy. That's crazy.
Someone stole it. There you go.
All right, let's go to some clips here. Oh, yeah, okay. Alan Dershowitz will do just about anything.
Oh, yeah.
To get on television. And of course, he's no longer invited onto television. So, I think Newsmax, do they still have a network, or One America Network? Whatever it is, the Dersh, it's few and far between. But Dershowitz does not think he exists unless he's on television. And so here he is with Steve Bannon reacting to Donald Trump's 34 guilty verdicts.
Convicted felon Donald Trump.
Professor Alan Dershowitz. Professor Dershowitz, you wrote a book at the start of this process called Get Trump. Did they get him today?
Hello?
Hello, Professor Dershowitz?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Steve Bannon, can you hear me? Yes, I can hear you fine,
you.
sir.
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Libertarian
I can
phone.
hear you fine. Perfect. You wrote the book, Get Trump. Did they get Trump today?
Well, they got him, and they got him good because he's unlikely to even be able to successfully appeal. He has to appeal first through the New York system. The New York system are old judges that don't want to be responsible for freeing Donald Trump. These are people who have to live with their families. These are people who don't want to be Dershowitzed. People know what happened to me when I defended Donald Trump on the floor of the Senate. Nobody on Martha's Vineyard would speak to me. Harvard Law School canceled me after I'd been there for 50 years.
We need to
and
go back a little bit.
judges
We
don't
need
want
to pause
that
it,
to happen.
and we need to just
soak this in.
I just want to reiterate, this is real as far as we know, that this is actually Alan Dershowitz, and he actually said these things. As far as we know, this is not artificial intelligence mocking Alan Dershowitz.
You know what? I actually think, you know how sometimes when you look up on the dictionary, words can have like multiple meaning. It's homonyms. So there's sometimes homonyms, right? There's like a stare that you step on, or stare where you're staring at somebody. That's just an example. Dershowitz can have two meanings. For him, it's getting dirty looks at Martha's Vineyard and no one can talk to him, or no one wants to talk to him. For Dershowitz, I would say, would be, say, allegedly having sex with an underage girl who was trafficked by Jeffrey Epstein. Like that victim got Dershowitz. So that's what I would use it as.
Yeah, I don't think it's just Trump support that has him not invited to Martha's Vineyard parties. I think it's maybe some other legal representation work that he was doing.
And I will also say, I do appreciate his acknowledgement that the law is, and the legal system is, a complete joke on some level. But I mean, for him to make this argument about criminal cases, this is part of like what, Guy had said, and others are saying as well. The for a guy whose entire career was built upon the legal system, who is a law professor at Harvard, to essentially say, to essentially nullify the entire legal system, criminal legal system in New York State, is pretty impressive.
He's saying that they are afraid of getting Dershowitzed by his definition, meaning that no judge will be fair to Trump because they're afraid that they too will not have a good social life on Martha's Vineyard. This is the case that he's making.
But what of those judges who might vacation upstate New York?
Right.
Like, what if they, do we need to find a judge that's not, part of a close-knit community in a vacation town? Maybe somebody who has like a cabin in the woods, or somebody who just likes to hike, and, and might do it, with just one or two close friends who understand that they, were just doing their job. Maybe there's no judges like that anymore. Go ahead.
You hear me? Yeah.
I can hear you fine. Perfect. You wrote the book, Get Trump. Did they get Trump today?
Well, they got him, and they got him good because he's unlikely to even be able to successfully appeal. He has to appeal first through the New York system. The New York system are old judges that don't want to be responsible for freeing Donald Trump. These are people who have to live with their families. These are people who don't want to be Dershowitzed. People know what happened to me when I defended Donald Trump on the floor of the Senate. Nobody on Martha's Vineyard would speak to me. Harvard Law School canceled me after I'd been there for 50 years. And judges don't want that to happen to them. So I am not encouraged that he'll get a fair appeal. It's possible. And ultimately, maybe he'll get to the Supreme Court, but by that time, the election will be over.
What do you think about, they've announced the sentencing for July 11th, just a few days before he takes the stage in front of the world to accept the Republican nomination? Your thoughts?
Yeah, he can probably get a stay of that. But the sentencing will be before the election. I don't think he'll get prison time. With this judge, you never know, but I don't think he'll get prison time. But he might get some, home arrest or probationary conditions or a big fine. This is a non-crime he's been convicted of. Never in American history has anybody been charged with a crime as ludicrous as this. Nobody has ever been charged with not reporting a hush money payment. If you have to report hush money payments, why would anybody ever pay hush money? This is a stain, a terrible stain on the American system of justice. In my book, Get Trump, I predicted this. I said there were going to be convictions. But
Okay, let's just do this again for Alan Dershowitz. The charges that Donald Trump was convicted of. Let's do this as 12B here. This is, or I should say, 12B. This is when this is law.com reporting, again, we'll do this again, April 6th, 2023, New York State has issued nearly 9,800 felony charges of falsifying business records since 2015. The idea that it was like hush money is largely irrelevant, except for the fact that it was also done in service of a campaign.
Exactly.
And I don't know if you remember John Edwards, but John Edwards was running for president.
Yeah.
And Obama's DOJ charged him with a similar violation of campaign finance laws when a donor paid money to essentially provide hush money for John Edwards' mistress. Now, I think ultimately he was exonerated, but we know the underlying crime happened and was adjudicated because that's why Michael Cohen went to prison.
Exactly.
And so the idea that it was hush money is relevant in any way, it's not. It's relevant only insofar as that it was done as a violation of election law. And therefore, here is I-Team NBC New York in that same April 7th, falsification of business records, rarely the top charge on New York indictments, even though there's been 9,800 of these over the course of the past 10 years. It is something that is layered on top of, like, why did they falsify these business records? If there was an underlying crime that those falsification of business records was perpetrated on, that's the story. So none of this is what Alan Dershowitz says. It may be the case that people don't want to be Dershowists or Dershicized.
All the judges in New York don't want to be Dershowitzed, his definition.
People, I mean,
that's
who
why
would
Trump can't
want to
get a
be
fair
Dershed
trial.
in the first place? No one.
Right. Certainly not me.
No. But it's amazing that Dersh is always able to turn this back to him.
Oh, he referenced his book about Trump how many times?
A little bit self-absorbed. I don't think people would say, Dershowitz, that synonym for being canceled.
Well, I mean, it's a little bit self-absorbed. And also, you know what's more self-absorbed? The fact that he was endlessly mocked for this exact, situation that he talked about, that he was not getting like favorable treatment from his friends on Martha's Vineyard. And it was a whole thing. And yet he's still so aggrieved by it that he's repeating it now as an example of how unfair the world has been to him. It's like, buddy, we see you with Jeffrey Epstein. Most people think that you shouldn't even be in public life.
He got Epsteined.
Yeah.
The reaction from the various members of the right has been pretty stunning. This one I found to be one of the more amusing ones. This is Tim Pool. And I will say that, at least in this tweet, he did not say prepare for a race war or a civil war undergirded by race. He said, he tweeted this out. The American people are in desperate struggle to regain control of their country from despots and warmongers.
Right.
Yep. They protect pedophiles like Epstein. That is the despots and warmongers.
Who, Alan Dershowitz?
They send your money to corrupt countries. This November is your chance to save this country and seize back control. Now, he's being a little fence city, which is very typical of Tim as to who that is. But if November is your chance to save this country and seize back control, it suggests that somebody has control now that is doing all these things like protecting pedophiles like Epstein.
Mm-hmm.
And the only person who is still in a position to seize back control would be via Donald Trump. Now, here's the funny thing about protecting pedophiles like Epstein.
Or actually, literally Epstein.
Exactly. Literally
Not
Epstein.
pedophiles like Epstein, but perhaps literally in one particular instance.
Now, I know what you're going to say. There's a lot of footage of Donald Trump with Epstein, and obviously they're palling around. But this is sort of interesting because the person who was considered to have protected Epstein was a prosecutor who made a ridiculously sweetheart deal with Epstein when he was convicted or was going to be charged down in Florida for child trafficking. And in such a way that it didn't really even make any news. It was sort of like just swept under the rug. The person who did that, what was his last name? It was
A something.
Acosta. Acosta. Now, that name may sound familiar because he was also Donald Trump's labor secretary. In fact, here is a headline from July 9th, 2019. Trump defends labor secretary Acosta over Epstein plea deal. Maybe Tim Pool's not aware of this, or maybe he just thinks that his audience are idiots.
Yeah, that's a plea deal where Acosta was told by some higher ups and maybe the FBI, like, steer clear of this. It's intelligence.
Yes.
Something to note. But you also were way too quick to say that that Tim didn't tweet anything about a war. He just tweeted war, period. Like,
is that what he just wrote?
He tweeted that probably 10 minutes before that, war, period.
Oh my God. So sad.
War. What is it good for? Views
views.
on Tim Pool videos.
And here's one more. That's the old one. There's one more that Tim put out there. Matt doubled up on it. I mean, it's so stupid. You could play it twice.
He tweeted that this was the war one, I think. You don't have that one? Okay, gotcha. Well, this is stupid too.
Here is
more from his timeline.
Tim Pool. I mean, I wonder if this isn't a picture that Tim Pool has on his ceiling. Like sort of like when I was a kid, I had a poster, that Farrah Fawcett poster on the wall or the ceiling, and this feels like something that Tim might have on his ceiling.
He's retweeting Trump 2024 now. That's pretty explicit.
Truckers should boycott New York, he said. I wonder if they get any traction on that. The first outlaw president.
I wonder if Tim Pool could motivate a trucker to do anything.
Hashtag free Donald Trump. Whoa.
Speaking of also ridiculous tweets, I mean, the right thinks they're going to make a lot of hay on this. Mm-hmm. And there is no doubt in my mind that for Trump supporters, this is going to motivate them to vote. Like the hardcore Trump supporters are going to be very motivated to vote. But here's the thing. They were already highly motivated to vote. That was almost it's almost definitional. Here is Matt Walsh tweeting out again now because he's basically played out his transphobia stuff, desperately thrashing around for something to hang on to. Here is Matt Walsh tweeting out, Donald Trump should make and publish a list of 10 high-ranking Democrat criminals who he will have arrested when he takes office. First on the list should be Joe Biden. Second should be Joe Biden's crackhead son. Now, Matt Walsh is an idiot. I will grant you that. But he also must think that his audience are idiots. This was tweeted out on May 30th, 2024. That was Thursday. Let me tell you what's going to be happening on the following Monday. That apparently Matt Walsh, who thinks it's so important that Joe Biden's crackhead son go put on trial.
Yeah, I'd say Blinken next.
Yeah, exactly. So important that he was unaware that, in fact, pop this up, Hunter Biden is going to be put on trial starting Monday.
For felony gun charges.
4 days after Matt Walsh tweets out, Donald Trump should put Hunter Biden second on a list to go to trial. I mean, so stupid.
And this is also a charge that is not typically brought. The reason that it even is being brought is in the same reason Trump is now in a bunch of legal quagmires. Hunter Biden is in this because when you are in the political spotlight, things come up that you don't necessarily want out there. It's not that they're coming after him as a part of a witch hunt. It's the fact that that's the nature of being in the area of public service. And Hunter Biden is not even there. He's just the son of the guy.
Yep.
And, you know, Matt Walsh is not somebody who is that committed to the facts or doesn't really care and has that kind of cynicism for his audience, because I am old enough to remember when he was on the Joe Rogan Experience and he said that millions of kids were taking puberty blockers, and he was live fact checked by Joe Rogan of all people, where they said it was actually 4,000. So he was off by the hundreds of thousands. The guy that had just, hitched his wagon to transphobia and spent the better part of that year.
He was an expert on this.
Working on a documentary.
And that 4,000, incidentally, was over the course of like several years.
Yeah, exactly. So not much commitment to the facts there from Matt Walsh.
So lazy. That's the thing.
Yeah.
I wonder how much their numbers are down because of Candace Owens leaving their network. And if they're not, like, all just sort of like mailing it in right now. Guys, this is just vacation time. We're just going to take vacation time and not worry about this stuff. Speaking of vacation time, the other day, I talked about the absolute laziness and mediocrity that Jerry Seinfeld always represented in my mind, but I mean, quite clearly does now, I think, to many people, when he talked about his new bit. He was very excited about his new bit where coffee, because coffee is the most important thing to people. And right before you die, you're going to think about your coffee. And then when asked, like, what's your favorite coffee? I don't know. Italian or France, it seems like to taste better there.
To be fair, he said he was working on that bit. He might need to work pretty damn hard.
Yeah, early stages.
That's quite a premise, though. I mean, it just shows like the just absolute, like, complete laziness.
It's vapid.
In his comedy that always existed, and but now he's also complaining about something else. Is this the point where
It's about real men.
Yeah, so Barry Weiss asked him about his trip to Israel. He went there after October 7th. Jerry also, you can find photos of him posing with the IDF and a bunch of machine guns, like a real tough guy, this multi-millionaire who wanted to cosplay as someone committing a genocide. So Barry Weiss also supports the genocide. She's the free speech warrior that hasn't commented once on the historic crackdown on the free speech of college kids protesting a genocide, and she's
affirmatively supported it.
Yes, but her whole premise, this is on her network, The Free Press. So, just curious.
Here's Jerry lamenting the loss of real masculinity.
Oh, is that this part? Yeah, that's this part. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I thought we were talking about when he was talking about October 7th. Okay, I set up the wrong situation. My bad.
And fulfill this many years long development of his Pop-Tart bit.
Right.
But on the other hand, I couldn't help but wonder if part of it is maybe your own nostalgia for this time that feels like another planet, or at least another country.
Of course it does. But there's another element there that I think is the key element, and that is an agreed upon hierarchy. which I think is absolutely vaporized in today's moment.
Okay.
And I think that is why people lean on the horn and drive in the crazy way that they drive. Because we have no sense of hierarchy. And as humans, we don't really feel comfortable like that. So that is part of what I think.
Pause it
is,
for one
if you
second.
wanna-
I want you to just like contemplate what he's saying here. This is about as reactionary as it gets. And the idea of like lamenting that we don't have a hierarchy anymore. Now, combine this with his crying in the past, and by crying, I don't mean literally, but crying about like wokeism and leftism superseding whatever it is that he wants to talk about. In other words, like, this is what I've been saying about the whole cancel culture as it is. Cancel culture has always existed. He just doesn't like the fact that he's no longer in the position and represented by the cancelers. That he's now, his views are no longer relevant. His stupid jokes are no longer relevant. This is, you know, and I don't want to just write it off as just like some 70-year-old man complaining that, you know, the kids aren't, you know, I'm not hip anymore. Jerry Seinfeld was never hip. His comedy was always pretty empty and mediocre and run of the mill and acceptable to like the lowest common denominator.
And Larry David
Larry
made that
David
show.
was his friend, and
Yeah.
and you know, Jerry was a good cipher for this type of comedy. But now it's even more explicit. I mean, you're complaining that we don't have the same hierarchies that existed in the 1950s? Tell us more about these hierarchies. Go ahead.
So that is part of what I think is, if you want to talk about nostalgia, that's part of what makes that moment attractive looking back. And the other thing is, as a man, can I
You
say
sure
that?
you are? Are you?
I've
I
always
didn't-
wanted to be.
I didn't ask your pronouns before we
I've
began.
always wanted to be a real
She's the
man.
worst.
I never made it. But
Pronouns. Oh my God! Oh my God! This is. Oh, you didn't give your pronouns beforehand.
Wait, is this the first time anyone's ever made that joke?
Oh my God!
Is it?
Oh my God! What are your pronouns? I don't care.
Hey, guys, look out. Jerry's going to do our one joke.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead. This is just amazing.
Sure you are. Are you?
I've
I
always
didn't-
wanted to be.
I didn't ask your pronouns before we
I've
began.
always wanted to be a real man. I never made it. But I really thought when I was in that era, again, it was JFK, it was Muhammad Ali, it was Sean Connery, Howard Cosell. You can go all the way down there. That's
Howard
a real
Cosell?
man. I want to be like
Pause
that
it for a
someday.
second. Howard Cosell. All right.
Who's Howard Cosell?
Howard Cosell was a sportscaster, and he was actually a great guy. But I wouldn't, like, you know, he interviewed Muhammad Ali a lot, and he was very supportive of Muhammad Ali, particularly at times where Muhammad Ali would get in trouble. Incidentally, Muhammad Ali, very much a leftist.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
There is 100% no doubt where Muhammad Ali would be in regards to what's going on with Israel and Palestine. I'll tell you that right now.
Yeah.
Like 100%, no doubt.
I mean, he spoke out
None.
against the occupied
Zero.
territories. Yeah.
Zero.
Yeah.
Zero doubt. But that's not the part that Jerry liked. He just liked it. He was like
A real man.
Big muscles. Big muscles. Go ahead.
Well, no, I never really grew up. I mean, you don't want to as a comedian because it's a childish pursuit. But I miss a dominant masculinity. Yeah, I get the toxic thing. I get it. But still, I like a real man.
You said something the other day that I just.
Wait, how does she just
moves
like
on.
let that move on from that? Like,
What do real men do? What do real
what is that?
men
Like,
do?
what is he talking about? Like, honestly, like, I mean, I would really like to examine what does a real man do?
Real men date children.
real men, what is he talking about? Like, what is it? What is it that combines that Muhammad Ali and JFK shared in his mind, and Howard Cosell? Like, this is just a guy who, grew up and wanted everything to be dominated by men. Like, I mean, he's literally calling for it.
He's saying that, but it's also like,
isn't it gross to him that he's being interviewed by a woman?
He says that he never grew up there, and I guess that was somewhat truthful, because this is all like heroes from his childhood that he's saying we need to return to. Yeah, you sound like I don't know. You're like, oh, I miss my teddy bear. I miss Muhammad Ali.
I miss Daddy.
I miss Daddy. I miss when I got to hear Howard Cosell call boxing matches. It's like, okay, yeah. I mean, I miss SpongeBob. Oh gosh, when could we go back to real masculinity?
Him making the serial movie to escape to a time where hierarchies were imposed is like, I would project that onto him and be like, well, I'm probably psychoanalyzing too much. He just admitted it.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
And here's the part where they talk about his trip to Israel.
Here he shows off his masculinity here.
Right, exactly.
Off target. So that's, to me, comedic.
Mm.
You know.
You were in Israel
Yes.
since the war started.
Mhm,
How
mhm.
was that trip?
The most powerful experience of my life.
Really?
I'm sure. Yeah.
Why?
Be so close to a slaughter of people and not
You know,
even be
you
aware
just-
of it. What?
Are you thinking of someone in particular?
Sorry.
One thing that I've been thinking about is how a huge part of the way you think about comedy
She's got to pretend
is how the
to
audience
cry,
never
too.
lies.
Wait, what?
Mhm.
Wait,
Right.
hold on.
But
We're just going to blow through that? Like, this is some hard-hitting journalism. Like,
In other words,
why are you crying?
Well, okay, so the official government of Israel tweeted out that video, okay? And I was like, oh, but they just wanted to show him getting like it's propaganda or whatever. They wanted to show him getting emotional, and then maybe he said something bad that they didn't want to include, so they cut it off, and it was just him being wordlessly crying. No, that was the extent of it. No follow-up.
What more do you need to know?
I mean,
I would have asked, like, she said, are you thinking of someone in particular? And he's like, well, what? And and the obvious question is, are you thinking about how you've been so supportive of a country for so long, and you're seeing the horrible destruction and the killing of children and whatnot? Oh, no? Something different? Oh, they gave you a car! Like what's going on here?
it's just him. He is right. He's never grown up. Israel is what he was told in his mind is a bastion of goodness. It's a place for him to go to get connected to his roots. And there's nothing even to worry about the settler colonial project and the genocide. Don't worry.
It's
And
just so sublime you can't even put it into words.
It really is. I mean, let's see where she goes with this. I have another issue that occurs to me that I hadn't contemplated, but let's.
There is I don't think Jews do well in an age of mobs. And I feel that right
God,
now
she's gotta
in our
pretend
culture,
like
it's
she's gonna
really
cry.
easy to form mobs.
Yes, really easy.
And what's the difference between the audience never lying, but when does the audience kind of tip into the mob? Do you see where I'm going with that?
I do.
There's something.
I do. They
Yeah.
won't
But
laugh
I
at my
really have
gay
been wanting
king
to
joke
ask-
anymore. They won't laugh at my gay king joke anymore. That's why I'm crying. Because maybe it's because I'm Jewish. I don't know.
There are mobs of Israelis stopping aid trucks getting into Gaza. Just to note.
Yes,
remodel.
That's not the mob.
But when I do my gay king joke, they laugh. So there you
They
go.
probably do love the gay king.
They do. I'm sure they,
They do. They think it's very funny.
You know, it is. That is something maybe instructive for him, that people who may find that joke funny also support Israel. Like, maybe, I don't know, what you're saying is pretty right wing.
There's some kind of comedy that flies in Israel that might not fly other places.
Exactly. Why is that? Would you like to examine that?
The thing that I really take away from this interview, I mean, aside from, the mediocrity of his thinking and the cloying that's going on here, and the fact that he basically cops to being just a total reactionary, and that explains all of his opinions on everything. I don't know if he's a billionaire. He certainly has hundreds of millions of dollars. Like, dude, what are you wearing like a polo shirt for? Like, this is when Jerry Seinfeld was a kid, when he was a high school student, like, to wear a polo shirt meant you were really cool.
Mm-hmm.
But come on, Grandpa.
I mean, yeah.
Take the Ralph Lauren polo shirt. It's so weird. I think it's just a weird thing to do. But
the whole situation is weird. Why are they having this conversation? What truth are they coming towards? Like, I love
how Barry White's fake cries to
there's a vocal fry.
Did they want to get into the specifics of Israel, or just like the general feeling? Because if you guys want to get into the specifics, they might bring you into some uncomfortable places.
I think a better commodity is just raw emotion, and just put that out as propaganda. It works for who he needs to work on.
The theme I get from this is that he's a little baby. Like, he is a little baby that wants Frosted Flakes like when he was a kid, that wants real men like when he was a kid.
I like real men. I mean, I'm nearing the end of my life where I wasn't one of those, but I do like them, whether or not they're toxic or not, Barry. Like, he's so concerned about the criticism. Like, a toxic, yeah, I know. Like,
right, why do you
who's
care?
that anxious about
well,
that?
that is such the epitome of a right-wing mentality. I don't care what policies he subscribes to. I'm talking about a mode of thought that, after having listened to Rush Limbaugh for decades, that was what Rush Limbaugh did. He was his primary function for, at least through the 90s and into the aughts, was to say that, like, when you are thinking that you're doing something wrong and that doubt creeps in, I am here to tell you that you don't have any doubt. Like, and he would be explicit about this. Like, he would be explicit. He was doing a little bit of, like, the self-helpy Jordan Peterson stuff was.
It's religious thinking.
Do not have doubt. Exactly. And you're going to hear its doubt, and it's going to make some sense to you. Like, yeah, I get it. Toxic masculinity and all the rape that take place, and in the show business where, like, so many women, it was just a function, like, their careers were a function of, like, whether, some movie mogul, I get that. But how do you get from, like, being aware of that to just dismissing it by just saying, saying the words? You need to nurture a right-wing mentality and aggrievement that overpowers that. And that's all that's on display there. It's fascinating. Dan from Columbus says Jerry Seinfeld wasn't hip. Of course he was hip. What other childless 40-year-old knew more than him about what high schoolers were talking about in the 90s?
It's a good point.
Yep,
it's a good
fair,
point. He was close to the culture.
Fair.
So close he could almost grope it.
Folks, we're not going to have time for phone calls. We should have never turned the voicemail off by mistake. A couple of you have been waiting for almost 50 minutes. Apologies.
I like how you say we should have never done that, as if such a disastrous choice.
I felt bad. I feel bad.
Yeah.
And then I thought, like, okay, well, I'll leave them hanging on there.
Also costs us money.
Wait a minute. Yeah, it ain't free.
Oh.
It ain't free.
Comes out of your salary. Emma.
Yeah, there you go.
Damn it. Why did you do that?
That was your 401k right there. Let's see. What else should we do? Let's save the PBD. That's going to be too long. I'll read some IMs and then we'll wrap it up. End of the week, folks. Dizzle McPhysical. We already. You underestimate the level of personal agreement that drives our politics in America, dude. Oh, no, I don't. Oh, no, I do not. Andy from Kansas City. I don't know if you were here for the zero-sum wars, but to my mind, the biggest driver of that Trump agreement is exactly been expressed by Jerry Seinfeld, which is, I miss the hierarchy that existed before. And there is no doubt that over the course of the past 40 or 50 years, the financial situation for individuals has slowly been degraded. The amount of work, the ability to lead a quality life has been degraded. Things are very expensive. Things are very often precarious. There's no doubt. But that sentiment, the reason why we don't have, after those 40 or 50 years, it seems to me, of a stronger pro-worker movement, although we are seeing it, come out of after COVID, there's a little bit more of that sort of consciousness and solidarity, is because there is a significant percentage of the country that looks to television, and because what is he talking about? Howard Cosell, Muhammad Ali, JFK. And it's interesting to me that his real man is Muhammad Ali, as opposed to, say, Martin Luther King. Right? I mean, it's a sports figure. It's like, I'm sure he could have said John Wayne, it's like cowboy, sports figure, The idea is that Jerry Seinfeld, when he grew up, even if it wasn't him, it was someone like him that was centered. And which is why interesting that he says Howard Cosell, because no one else in the world would say this, but Howard Cosell was he was relevant, he was a sportscaster, but his relationship with Muhammad Ali and the idea that somehow Howard Cosell could be centered in that question of real men is very odd. It's a very odd choice if you're aware. Well, if you're aware of just that dynamic, the idea being that the idea that people like Jerry Seinfeld are no longer centered in our culture is the thing that, bothers him. And in many respects, I think drives a lot of the Trump votes.
Well, I'm sorry, dude, but your writing partner is very centered in culture. I mean, I don't know if Larry David has ever been more relevant to people.
But Larry David specifically is. But
But that's the problem with Jerry is he's upset that he doesn't have anything to say that's relevant anymore. It's not just age or people but
I'm making a more general point about which is the hierarchies.
Yeah.
And within the context of the hierarchies, it is the case that when Jerry Seinfeld looked at TV and saw famous men, everything was about men.
Right.
Everything. Every ad, every TV show, everything was about men and white men. Everything was about people that were sort of somewhat situated like Jerry Seinfeld.
Yep.
And people of that generation, and maybe, a little bit younger and maybe even my age as well, a little bit younger even, We grew up with like, even if it was an ad with a mother, it was a mother to a son who's, got stains on his knees, on his clothes. And that's why you need Gain, soap or whatever it is.
Well, I mean, it's part of why I don't have, I would say, an emotional attachment to older movies, that even when I appreciate the artistry of them, it doesn't necessarily, I think, grab me in the way it does like my dad or something like that. And that's in part because it's not for me. Like, a lot of it wasn't, I don't think, and some movies are, there's some wonderful old films, but, when the women aren't writing the material sometimes, or I'm not even like talking, and I'm a white person, there are swaths of black people, of Asian American people, whoever, where this media wasn't for them either. So I think it's easy for someone like him to be nostalgic about it because it was all, as you say, centered around,
somewhat,
it's all for him.
Centered, people like him, people like me. It was basically it. And when you don't see yourself, I say this all the time, like, what's that black guy doing in the Cialis commercial? That should be me. That type of thing. Like, honestly, like regardless of what it was, in every element of our society and culture was, broadly speaking, just a function of like me in some other context, or, me in my fantasy. Like, I could be a big boxer, or I could be Howard Cosell, or I could be president. Right. Like, it was just all of the things he's talking about were just not available to women at that age. We're not available. There is an opportunity for black people if they're in sports, because he's not admiring Muhammad Ali because of the fact that he wouldn't go to Vietnam. He's not admiring Muhammad Ali because Muhammad Ali would have, been on the other side of this conflict with Israel and Palestine.
He's not admiring Muhammad Ali when he said, the entire power structure is Zionist. They control America. They control the world.
100%. No. He's admiring him because he's a strong guy boxing. I mean, it's not just an example of how shallow his thinking is, how reactionary it is. And incidentally, also, it gives you an example of how reactionary Barry Weiss is, and why they speak to the right wing in this country, because it is grievance. And it's grievance based upon just their status that they have lost in some fashion.
And by the way, he can still be a reactionary right winger and vote Democrat. Like, I mean, that if I know he's done fundraisers for Democrats and stuff like that in the past, but that doesn't necessarily mean that his politics are in any way indistinguishable from the people that we're talking about.
Yep. I do think maybe we should learn something. The next time there's a Social Security actuary report out, you should just be like, and cry.
What do you think about the Social Security report?
Is there someone specific you're thinking about getting Social Security?
No. Next question. Move on to Medicare. Move on to Medicare, please. Oh, God. BF from New York. A newer member tried calling in yesterday. I couldn't hear the clips while on hold. Is that normal?
No, it's not normal. We fixed it a little way through the show.
Love what you guys do. Wanted to say hi. Happy Donald Trump is guilty day. And Trucker here. Answer to that question as to whether Tim Pool has influence with truckers is no. No, he can't. Midwest Mike and Trump voice. Cohen is my Judas Escargot. Stormy is my Mary Margarine. Judge Poncho Pilate. Who does that make me? You do the math. Vermont Ben. Has anyone else been following Belgian politics lately? It seems like Flemish fascists are primed to take power in Flanders after elections are held on June 9th, potentially in the federal government on a platform of extreme Islamophobia, anti-immigration, and Flemish separatism. The Belgian state itself could be broken up. Ay, ay, ay. Morpheus. Trump also claimed his press conference this morning is that they want to put him in jail for 187 years. Salustro. Sam, I need a shofar for Donald Trump's conviction by a jury of his peers, please. That is a fair request. He can vote for himself in Florida. Florida takes New York law where felons can vote. No, that was reversed as far as I remember by Ron DeSantis.
Yeah, they won it on a referendum, and then DeSantis kiboshed it.
Ben from Missouri. Hey, crew, new member here. Recently, Missouri abortion advocates submitted well over double the needed signatures for a petition to put abortion on the ballot this November. Additionally, an effort to make it harder to pass ballot measures died in the state Senate due to Republican infighting, as well as 9 Democratic state senators doing the longest filibuster in state history, clocking in at 5 hours. All of this happening in a very red state like Missouri just shows how popular the issue is. It really makes me wonder why the Biden campaign doesn't seem to want to make abortion a central issue in the election. Thanks for all the coverage. Left its best 50 hours for the filibuster. My last IM said 5 because I'm allergic to proofreading. I'm not convinced that abortion won't come more into the fore. I think
Yeah.
I think they don't feel that the campaign is starting until the debate.
Till June.
That's my guess.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Apparently Biden gave that. We still haven't seen what he said at that speech today, but like he did that thing where he was walking away and then the reporter yelled out to comment on it, and then he did say something. But they're going like I heard his one of his top campaign officials was on CNN or MSNBC at some point, and they're going with we're above, really. It's a sad day for America, and we're kind of above.
Can I tell you how absolutely enraging that is?
Yep. Yeah.
Because this is Atrios had a clip from I don't know where the story is from. CNN. It's from the CNN. Guidance from the Democratic Policy Communications Committee advised partisans distressed that, quote, our justice system worked as it's supposed to and shows that Republicans will, quote, bend the knee to former President Trump, but included no specific attacks around those facts of the case. It does not look likely to be much of an issue going forward as well, especially if they're not getting a signal from the top of the ticket to drive the point home. I don't think Jeffries, speaking of Hakeem Jeffries, or leadership will use leadership capital to talk about Trump, said one senior Democratic aide. So now they're afraid to talk about Trump in the most material terms. This is the problem with that. I get it. You don't want to just run on Trump. You want to offer something positive, blah, blah, blah. If you don't talk about how Donald Trump is a convicted felon, the press will not talk about how Trump is a convicted felon. I mean, this has just been so obvious over the past 20 years of politics, maybe more, that in an era where people are looking for clicks and where the news is driven by what people say and do, as opposed to the news just sort of saying it is, unprecedented. We've had a lot of coverage of this Donald Trump thing, but you must frame how this thing is talked about. Convicted felon Donald Trump.
Crooked Donald Trump.
Former president.
Yes.
Convicted felon Donald Trump.
Yes. Yes.
Hush money down.
I mean, what they feel that it is below the office. It makes them look weak, or it makes them look smaller. I don't know what world that is. It shows a complete lack of understanding about communication and how media works and how people work. That's how you begin to get it into the zeitgeist. 5 more. Ding dong. Sam, what cruise lines have you been on, and should you consider the Disney Alaska cruise? I've only been on I think it's Holland America is the Nation cruise. You can join me on the nationcruise.com/MR.
I've been on 2 cruises, both paid for by my grandparents. One of them a Caribbean, one of them an Alaskan, and Alaska is gorgeous. It's cold though, so you're gonna be inside looking at how nice it is. I would recommend the Caribbean ones.
Oh my gosh. Although I've heard good things about I was on the cruise with these people, and there's a lot of people who actually cruise, they'll do the Great Lakes.
Yeah.
Do the Danube or something like that.
I would like
this
to
is
do
all
the Danube.
fascinating.
Yeah. River cruises, I think, would be very interesting.
Dank Uger. I miss when Judge Janine started drinking at 6 a.m. So low energy these days. Tacoma Joe. Shofar, please, for new listener, my sister Gabby, who, despite being a PMC, is pretty all right. Thank you, Gabby. Two more. Ryan from Rochester. We could compare what's happening in America to the end of the Roman Empire when the Christian cult and its propaganda caught on to a wave of fascist corruption, corrupt populism, fascism within a fascism, or fascism turning onto itself, and aristocratic corruption abandons the idea of the empire to run with their wealth and hide among the cultists. And the final I am, Tom Tacoma wept. So there'll be no live election coverage from MR on YouTube if you're having a live show. No, we're going to stream that live show. We're going to stream the whole thing.
Oh, we should. Yeah.
Of course.
Well, I know. I mean, do we have the capability at the venue?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
They have the best streaming mechanism there.
We should have some blackout conditions in case we don't sell enough for those ticks, but
I don't think that's going to be a problem.
No, I'm joking.
Oh. And the final I am of this crazy ass week. Let's see. Christo.
Shout out to the 7,000 of you watching right now.
Oh, wow. I once saw Seinfeld and young Shoshana at a Soho art gallery guffawing in derision over the Francis Bacon paintings on display. Whatever one might think of Bacon's work, there is absolutely nothing funny about them. Idiots. Folks. Oh, Bradley in absentia. Matt, Emma, great job this week. Dorsey, great job this week. John Aarons, great job. Isaac, Chris and Maria, great job. Julie, Kelly, great job. Corey and Jacob on the AM Quickie, great job this week. Folks, see you on Monday.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the lie bar. But finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my pilot light shining bright. I get somewhere the choice was made, for the option where you don't get paid.